If you're in Seattle, and you need to buy or sell a home, we'll be right there for you. Because we're the realtors that you can trust. So go to ronanddonsitdown.com.
You're listening to The Ron and Don Show on the Ron and Don Radio Network.
Hey everybody, welcome to Ron and Don Radio Show, and I've got Perry Atkins here. We're going to do our real estate only with a special guest. Perry is a good friend of mine, and also he is a managing director, family wealth manager for Baird Financial. So thanks for coming in. You're a friend, and you've also helped me with my money, and that's why I wanted to have you on today. I always tell people, go, how did you meet Perry? It's like we were at some kind of food event.
Yeah, well, I picked you up at a party.
Yeah, so Don, when we were on the Cairo, I had to do like a dog and pony thing at some food event. Yada, 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 and introduce somebody. And then you and your wife came up and introduced yourself.
Yeah, well, my wife has a great eye for people's faces and voices. And she said, that's Ron Upshaw. And we'd been listening to you guys on Cairo forever.
Yeah.
And so, and you were a poor wallflower sitting on a couch by yourself.
Right.
And I'm a guy that's a connector, and I just love meeting people. So I just introduced myself, and we just started chatting up food.
So we've had a friendship ever since. And you've actually helped me with my personal finances. So we're going to talk about the real estate in a second. But I did want to throw a couple scenarios out at you, because we deal with this all the time, and Don and I, like you, are fiduciaries. We like to try to do what's very best for the client, regardless of if it helps us or not. And I'm sure you've done this as well, where you've helped somebody and got nothing in return. You just did it because it's the right thing to do. So one category of person that I come across, and I was just talking with someone yesterday, a life event has happened. They feel like they're starting from zero. In this case, it's a divorce. And they're like, Ron, I'm going to call you because I've got 2 kids. I'm approaching, 40 plus years old. I feel like I'm starting from zero. When you meet that type of person, and they're probably not starting from zero, but emotionally they feel like I'm in the hole. Where do you start?
Actually, it's a great question, because it's something I'm working on with my team right now, which is talking about tackling the controllable, the objective things that are in front of you. Because right now in this environment we're in, the amount of subjective that's going on, headlines you can't do anything about.
Wars.
Right? Yeah. And politics in general, there are things you just can't do anything about. Those are the things that people get wound up about, right? If you can reduce it to what are the objective things you're trying to solve for, you start to gain control. You gain control not just practically, you also gain control emotionally as you start to put the subjective aside and focus on the controllable, on the objective things in front of you. So as you described, a woman single with kids, divorced, right? It's like, all right, what are you things you've got going on? What's going to come out of the divorce for you in terms of property, either kind of property, real or property, personal property, right? What is the income sources you're going to have? What are your needs your children are going to have? What have you got for retirement assets? How old are you? Those are all the objective things you can start. You can't solve for how old you are.
Right.
But you can solve for what matters about how old you are. You're like, I'm 10 years out from Social Security, or I'm 30 years out from Social Security.
Well, let's take this person, we'll just make this a case study here. So let's say we have 2 kids. They have to live somewhere. So this is where like Don and I might intersect.
Right.
And maybe intersect with you
Yeah,
as a team.
absolutely.
And we would say, okay, you're getting a divorce. You have 2 kids. You probably want to stay in the same school district with the same friends. So do you, from the jump, say, let's talk about housing first, and then let's talk about Roths or 401ks or all the other vehicles?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because again, it's back to the objective, the living thing, right?
Yeah.
Residence, that is an objective thing. Where the kids go to school, that's an objective thing. And absolutely. And then you're saying, okay, the resources that I have, how can I use those to support this first objective? How can I use those resources to support retirement 20 years from now? How can I use those? So it's really getting away from the, God, I just got divorced. I don't know what to do. right? Which is the how you feel about it to how am I going to solve it and being really direct about
Would
that.
you ever advise somebody to, let's say, hey, your divorce is really nasty. This is not going well. Maybe you rent an apartment for a couple years and then we'll buy a house. Or let's just get some cash in the bank account so you can buy groceries and get your life straight.
Done all of those things. Commonly, I tell clients, whether you're wealthy or middle income, whatever, have a reserve. Let's talk about the reserve represents, I always use your roof blows off your house and you need to fix it today, or a tree falls on a little home in the middle of the
I know exactly what you're talking about.
All right. So reserves, critical to me. Doesn't matter how much money you have. Have something that's readily available. Sorry, I lost the first part of that.
And so we're talking about, should they rent something for a while?
And this environment particularly, I'd say it's been a 50-50 when we've got clients deciding whether to buy or to rent, that we come back and tell them to rent. It's not as often in the past because of rates, particularly.
I could sense this person's fear because they'd spent all of their 20s into their 30s and now the kids are getting of a certain age. And the prospect of not owning that house is terrifying to them because they're like, what am I doing? My marriage has failed and now I'm going to be homeless.
And so that's back to the same thing though about objectivity of saying, okay, what is the best thing for me in my financial circumstances right now that's going to get me to the next stage? Am I better off buying or renting? And then literally walking through the math around that is trying to get them off of and again, not saying it's not real that you got divorced and it's emotionally, traumatic, but really bringing them back. And it's funny because I watch as we do this, and these markets are a great example of this, right? Everybody's torn up about the markets right now. You get them off the subjective and you get them to the fact, what I can control part of it, and I can hear their anguish diminish. You can hear them dial back the stress as they're doing that because they feel like they're starting to take control of their lives by solving those objective questions. But the rent versus buy thing, it's easily 50-50, if not more, towards rent these days.
All right, we're going to change groups, change models here. Let's talk about the person that you interact with, I interact with. They're in objectively too much house. They're either in love with a 2.95 interest rate, or they don't have a lifestyle where they don't know where they're going to go next, and they're rattling around this house. And what advice do you give them?
I got a great example on this one. And if my client hears this, he'll know I'm talking about him. But
okay.
Living in a 6,000 square foot house with 3 kids, he and his wife, in a, let's just say a location that has geographic problems potentially.
Okay.
House is worth probably $4.5 million. He wanted to retire. He was just tired of working. He was just absolutely diminished. He could not work a bit more. And so he looked at all of his math and we said, you're good, except you need money out of your house, right? Which means you'll have to sell your house.
Right.
And he's like, I'm not ready to sell my house. We said, I know, you've still got a kid living there. You're not, and going to be there for a little bit. And he needed a couple $1 million out of the house that would ensure they had enough cash to retire on.
Sure.
Made a deal with him in term financial planning. We just said, great, you're just going to need to sell the house 7 years from now, right? Whether it's 6 or 8, you're going to need to sell that house. You need to bring that money onto your balance sheet. You're going to downsize. And so we kind of made it's not like a written agreement, but he understands. Deal. And what it allowed him to do is to live at the pace he wanted to today, because he could spend in anticipation of the money he'd get out of the house at some point in the future. He's still going to live in a $2.5 million house someplace when he takes 2 out. He'll be good. One funny thing.
How did you unlock the mental side of that? Because there are people that look you in the eye and they go, we can't move. It's like, what do you mean? You're a prisoner in your own house.
So you come back and it's the objective thing of here's the objective. This is what you should do. And the subjective in this case, it was a person so burned out on their career and profession that it was, physically manifesting itself, right? They were sick from having to work as hard and as much as they did. It's like, here's your trade-off that you can retire tomorrow. And he had to give 60 days notice. And he called me once a week for those 60 days to say, are you sure?
Right.
We'd say, yeah, we're sure. One little thing in there, and this is something for you guys. We said, what's your risk? You've got this house worth this amount of money in this potentially geographic problem spot. earthquake insurance.
Right.
We said, so you need to be here 7 years, and if your house falls down because of this, you need to know that you're going to get your money out of it somehow. So we got earthquake insurance put in place on the house to ensure that at least he'd get most of what he needed out of it in future years for that 7-year period of time. He is so happy. It's been 5, 6, it's actually been almost 7 years. He is so happy to have made the decision and the trade-offs of knowing he was going to downsize to a very nice house.
So we're going to get back to real estate in a minute, but it reminded me of something. I think you and I might have been talking about this. Can you explain the phenomenon of, regardless of how much wealth a person has, people feel like they need double that? So it doesn't matter if you have $10,000, $1 million, or $1 billion. Do people come to you and go, man, Perry, if I could just double it, I'm ready to tap out?
It's unexplainable. It is 100% true phenomena, but it is unexplainable. It really is. Actually, one of my favorite things is, and this just happened when I was in Japan, I am always lecturing wealthy clients to treat themselves a little bit, right? Spend your money. This is back to the quality of life thing, right? And so one of them is, I tell them, fly business class. Stop sitting in the back of the bus. You're 70 years old.
Right.
Stop sitting in the back of the bus. And I've realized now people need permission to do that. They're looking to somebody to give them permission to spend their money. Mm-hmm. Part of my job, and this is a subjective piece of it, I can take the objective of how much do I have and do I need all of it, and say subjectively now, because you want to treat yourself because you've reached that point in life, spend some of your money on yourself in a reasonable way. I've had more clients come back and say, oh my God, thank you for telling me I could fly business class. I've always wanted to, and I could never bring myself to do it. The need for permission to do the right thing. And you guys have got to be in that position at times.
Sure.
Given, got to ride up front, baby.
So let me throw this out. I'm talking to Perry Atkins again. He's the managing director at Baird Financial. And so I preach this a lot, and tell me if I'm wrong. For the average person that's not pulling down huge salaries every year, they're in the Pacific Northwest, not a better vehicle than real estate to build wealth, in part because you get to live there. I can't live in my 401k or my stock portfolio, but I can live and improve my house. Is that good advice? Am I preaching the gospel here or not really?
So, when we do financial planning. That is the core of what we do for our business. And one of the things we always talk about is your primary residence, its importance, right? So we're not talking investment real estate for this discussion. Primary residence, right, is what's going to carry you through to the point where maybe you can't live in it anymore, and the value that you've accumulated in there has real value, whether it's then to move into a retirement home, right, downsize, whatever. Like the description I just gave you, the guy with the big house, he really needed the money he'd accumulated in that house over the years. Sure. And maybe he wouldn't have had it if he hadn't accumulated in the house. Maybe he would have spent it on fast cars and loose women. Sure. I don't know. Right. But there's a huge value to that. And that's both, again, I hate to do the objective subjective, the objective of having saved money in it that you can use in the future for whatever needs you might have. Right. But the subjective of the comfort it represents matters. It really does at the end of the day.
Because we talked to a client a while back that was like, I should have just put this money in the market and I'd probably have just about as much equity. And I was like, yeah, but you lived here. You got to live here. And your kids went to school here.
I'm a big quality of life person. That's why I say I'm a bad advisor sometimes, because I tell people to spend their money, right? Quality of life matters. Money is not just to be accumulated and given away at the end of your life. Use it.
Right. So let's talk about a scenario that I heard you and Don talk about a little bit. You have your first house, you're living, maybe you got some stock options and you've got some money in savings. You got a little bit rattling around. At what point does the second piece of property become an attractive option to having everything in stock options or everything in the market?
And diversity matters. It really does. I'm not the guy that's going to say, go buy this investment property or whatever, but it is a common conversation with our clients that want to do that or need to do that. It's like, awesome. Do that because it's a diverse element away from your bond portfolio, your stock portfolio, your retirement accounts, whatever, your crypto account. Diversity can matter during times like at this point in the marketplace, right? You want something that you're either living in or you're looking at that has real property attached to it.
Right. You have to drive by it and go, that's mine. That's
Exactly. And you look at your portfolio and go, oh God, I'm down 10% this week. Right. That hurts. It really hurts emotionally without question. So in some ways it's a comfort, right? But it's also objectively valuable on your balance sheet as a diverse element of what you do.
And then my final question for you in our real estate only segment is, how do you strategize with clients on the off-ramp? So they've lived a good life. They've raised their kids. The kids are now gone. They're in that phase where it would be smart to make some decisions. What's the off-ramp? To just sell it and downsize? To move to Thailand? Like, or does it depend to each individual person?
Yeah, it is so individualized. It's, back to the Ballard people I mentioned before that had nothing to go to, right? They'd never built anything around it. It's like, just leave it and die with it in place and let your kids get a step-up cost basis on everything you have. For other people, it's like, let's help you improve your circumstances and buy that second home you always wanted to have someplace else and figure out how to get it out of your balance sheet for you to be able to do that. I mean, it is so individualized.
Do people need that permission to get an off-ramp?
Absolutely. 100%. 100%. People, all of us are so prone to routine, and routines can be little routines, when you brush your teeth in the morning, to the big routines of never having left the house you own, never selling anything in any of your portfolios, always flying in the back of the bus. People need help getting out of those routines at times when it's right. They need help getting out of those routines. They need permission or somebody to look at it objectively and say, you got it. You got the room to do whatever you want to do. It's a big part of what we do. My wife refers to me as a financial therapist.
Right.
So, and it's true. It really is. One of the things we do with people, and I think good people in my business do this routinely, is if somebody said to you, what's your risk tolerance, right? And you have some definition about it. You have no idea what risk tolerance is, right? You have no way to measure that.
Sure.
It's something we talk about with people all the time. And similarly about quality of life. What's a good quality of life for you? And people don't really have a great way of describing it. It's surprising. You think people would think about that all the time. How do I want to live?
Right.
And they really don't. They're so focused on the numbers on a piece of paper, for instance, or the house that they're living in. They don't think it's like, what would I really like to do? And what am I willing to do from a risk perspective to get there?
And then my final question, I just want to respond to this. I did an interview with one of my favorite music producers way back in the day, Daniel Lanois. He did U2 and Peter Gabriel and all those great records back in the 90s. And we were doing the interview, and I don't even remember what I asked him, but he said, my job is knowing when to stop. He's like, if you're doing a U2 record and you need an orchestra and you need the band and the backup singers and everything else, and another time it's a piano and a singer. He's like, my job is to know when to stop. How do you teach people or show people when to stop? Like, when is enough? When it's okay? When to have the permission?
In accumulation you're talking about.
In accumulation.
The most often we see it is telling people, go spend your money. You've accumulated plenty. Go spend your money. And we just have to say it to them so directly. It's rare I see people are able to turn that spigot on their own because they just have a fear. That fear is always in the back of their heads. It's not enough. And you have to be really direct and say, I've done this a long time. I've seen a lot of circumstances. You have plenty. We have a phrase for it. We call it money.
Right.
But we really do say that to people. Spend it. You've hit the point. You've gotten through your accumulation phase. This is the spend it phase. Go do it. And they need that permission. They need that goading. It's surprising how often that's the case, regardless of the level of wealth.
So, and I guess to wrap up the show, if you don't have a financial plan, just start. Do something to start.
Yes.
Talk to someone. Go to...
There's online things that are great for financial planning. It's a fill-in-the-blank exercise.
Because fear is a bitch. Fear will freeze you in your tracks.
Absolutely.
And you cannot 100%. Do anything.
100%.
So if you're living in fear just because of a death in the family or a divorce or your job got fired or whatever, just move. Make some sort of movement, because it might be as bad as you think, which in case you need a plan. It might be better than you think, which in case you need a plan.
And the optimism in me, the optimist in me says most times it's better than you think it is.
Yeah.
It really is. Most people are in a spot to fix wherever they are. They really are.
Okay, well, thanks for coming in. We really appreciate it. And that's the Ron and Don Show today. It's real estate only with our guest, Perry. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
Well, that's it. Show's over. We'll see you next time on the Ron and Don Radio Network.